G'day guys, welcome to Rukshan On X. I'm back for the new year. Thanks for the message, Rami. Good to see you live, Rukshan. Welcome back. Yes, 2025, I am back with Rukshan On X, and it's been quite an interesting start to the year. So there's a lot to catch up on in terms of news, even though it's only been a couple of days in. I think we're on to the 8th of Jan here in Australia, and already so much happening, especially around the world. I think Australian news is still kind of very slow. And that's kind of just slowly kicking into gear. But yeah, lots of things going on overseas if you're following the news, obviously. So yeah, got a few things to talk about today. A few bit more lighthearted today, just kind of getting back into the swing of things and doing this live show format. I've decided to spend a bit more time on reading comments and interacting with all of you guys as well. So thanks for joining in. Thanks. Yep. Happy New Year, everyone. Mr. Pineapple says hello. Hello, Mr. Pineapple. Yeah, some other interesting comments as well. I might get to some of them later. Hey, Iffy. Hey, bro. Happy New Year. Thanks for tuning in, mate. What else has come through here? There you go. Some comments, of course, directed towards Avi. Any comments directed towards Avi Yemeni, I would suggest reading his book, Rebel from the Start. You will get all the information you need about Avi and any topic. He talks about a lot of different things. He talks about his family. He talks about his career. He talks about Israel and all types of things. So I recommend you guys purchase his book, Rebel from the Start. And that way you can talk about Avi Yemeni all you like. Let me do Rukshan on X and just talk about myself and not Avi for once. Dishan says, hey, Rookie. Hey, mate. How's it going? And Lucy's there. Hey, Rukshan 832 is a Bible verse if anyone wants to look that up. Happy New Year, Linda. Thanks for joining in. And look, guys, so the main thing is very kind of relaxed in terms of how I want to present these shows. I've decided after a bit of thinking about how I want to do this. And it might go on for a little bit more longer than an hour, so I can get to some of your comments as well. Someone is asking, are you covering the Alternative Australia Day parade? So that day I'm actually working. So I'm actually working at a wedding that day, and I don't know if I'll be able to manage my time to get in there. I might be able to see, just depending on the schedule. But if anyone is interested, there is an Alternative Australia Day parade that is happening because, of course, you know, the powers to be in Victoria, Jacinta Allen and the Labor Party, and of course all the other left-wing lunatic activists who want to cancel that day, have been quite successful in slowly eroding the the sanctity of such a day, and that for that reason, the Victorian government has decided just to scrap the Australia Day parade altogether. So there will be an alternative Australia Day parade. I'll actually see if I can find the details at some point in the show, or maybe closer to the date actually, and share with you guys some details about that. Because yeah, if you want to go celebrate your country and engage with fellow Australians that love Australia as well, especially as all the most of Australia Day, the media will be focused on all the Invasion Day events that are, of course, heavily attended by politicians and governments to show that how much disdain they have for this country. So let's just get a couple more messages. Happy New Year. Big year this year. That's right, Preston. So you can check out Preston. He's on X, always on Spaces. I believe there's a group that Preston is involved in running called Australians on X. So if you guys haven't jumped on X yet, I highly recommend it. If you're watching on Facebook and YouTube, because I am simulcasting this or multi-streaming this on different platforms, get on X. I'm going to be talking a lot about Facebook and X today as well. One of my favorite topics is social media, the new alternative information media that's happening, and of course the information war that's going on all the time around us, and how we as independent journalists, and of course everyone else that's engaged in sharing information and sharing news and getting everyone else aware of what's happening in their country and of course around the world, is using these platforms. So if you're not on, jump on X, and it's going to be quite you're going to find it's quite the interesting place. Thank you, Zeta. Patrick, thanks, mate. Mark Rowley says, take no notice of the Jew haters. Yep. Bev, I'm doing really well, so hope you're doing well as well. Yeah, so towards the end of the show, I'll try to find the pamphlets or the links, or maybe someone else can post it here, and where we can find out about the Australian Day alternative. So that will be really good. And I'll touch a little bit on Australia Day and immigration and all these kind of issues as well, because there are some calls to actually have me deported as well. So, and I want to touch a bit more on that. I know I talk about this topic all the time, but that'll be quite interesting. So let's just jump straight to this. So what's your opinion of Zuckerberg's announcement today? So that's actually something that I wanted to talk about in quite some detail, because predominantly, especially during the lockdowns and all that crazy stuff that happened, I used Facebook very heavily, and a lot of my audience actually built up on Facebook. But of course, the more that you actually start getting an audience on a platform like Facebook, especially back then, the more they would start to censor you, and all types of different methods of suppression. Of course, they famously used the fact checkers to great effect to suppress all types of conversations, and it was this kind of backdoor censorship that they were doing by using these fact checkers. So definitely, it's very interesting for me to hear from Mark Zuckerberg, a person that I would never, ever, even today, after he's made such an announcement, would trust an individual like that, because I think he's a coward. I think he's spineless, and whatever he's doing today, it's either motivated by fear of the Trump administration, it's motivated by, it's a business calculation based on the way that the world is shifting since, of course, that historic victory of Donald Trump at the election last year, and more, I think more powerfully, the actions of someone like Elon Musk with X, who's really changed the game for these social media companies. And I think Zuckerberg is reacting to a lot of these things happening around him, where this empire that he has built around connecting people and social media and the news and all these types of things, he gave so much of it away to the authoritarians, the government, and he really sold everyone out on his platform. And now he's trying to weasel his way back in. And look, it's there are benefits to it, of course. I mean, the more that we have freedom of speech, the more that we have the ability to share content on different platforms, especially platforms that might be used by people that might not necessarily engage on X, for instance. It's always important. So, I mean, there's benefits to, an upside to what he's saying as well. But I think overall, it doesn't really elevate him as an individual. It doesn't put him anywhere near the status of someone like an Elon Musk, who's taken massive risks the only reason that this Zuckerberg guy has done any of this, and if you listen to his, almost like groveling acceptance of his fate in terms of free speech, the only reason seems to be out of the fact that, he's no longer a coward because there's someone else in the administration in the US who's willing to champion free speech. So therefore, it's easier for him to actually, participate in the system, which is just shows you just the type of person that he is. Yeah. So here we go. Let me just remove this comment. So as you can see, guys, it's a free-flowing show. Your comments that you're saying will come across the side. I will very rarely do a Zuckerberg and censor people. Only hateful, very kind of evil stuff that I will try to remove if someone alerts me to it. I'm doing this by myself, so I am the moderator as well. So yeah, please try not to be abusive, because I will keep an eye on things and remove comments in terms of, especially if they're calling for hateful actions or criminal actions. Yeah, Daniel James makes a great point. The Overton window is definitely shifting, and there's this seismic shift going on when it comes to just news in general, particularly in the States. I don't think it's really shifted over here to Australia yet. We're kind of still in this bubble where we're pretending like, we have our own little thing, and I'll get to some of that as well. But I think worldwide, especially on the big tech platforms, which will trickle down into Australia, there's no way that we can avoid what's going to be happening with these free speech platforms. It'll eventually trickle down here. I think we will also shift in terms of how we talk with news. So someone's asked here, where's Avi begging for cash somewhere? For sure. Avi Yemeni is not on Rukshan On X show. He'll be with me tomorrow on the Opposition podcast at 7 p.m. So you can catch me and Avi live on the Opposition podcast. And maybe you can ask him this question yourself. Is this the year that woke dies? Look, I think woke has had the biggest, it's almost like woke has been nuked by what happened with the Trump election, and just how many things that people have outright, rejected. So many of these things that people have rejected. And yeah, if any year was going to usher in the year that woke dies, because I think it's going to try to hang on. We haven't really seen how woke things are going to get until Trump is inaugurated. He starts implementing some of his policies, and you're going to see the theatrics from the other side of the political aisle and the media as well, because it's all going to be about being as ridiculous as possible to challenge Donald Trump. So let's just see what happens there. And one more message here. Hey Rukshan, Happy New Year. Thanks, mate. Happy New Year. MAGA Groper, do you think demographic changes are bad? I will definitely get to this topic at the end, because I want to talk about the demographics of Australia. It's a discussion that many people have been having around immigration. I myself, many people have been telling me very recently online, people that don't particularly share, the love for Rukshan that maybe some of you guys do, because of the way that I look. And, my claim to be an Australian is always being challenged online by all types of different people. The left want to deport me. The far right, Nazi-adjacent style individuals also want to deport me for different reasons. So it's quite interesting. I'm in the middle of all of this because, as you can tell, if you've watched a lot of my content, I'm someone actually that really values what Australia means. I try to defend Australian values. I, of course, always talk about and discuss Western values. So I don't want to digress too much from what I'm going to be doing at the moment, and I'll get to this topic towards the end. So let's bring up this video of Zuckerberg, and let's just play through it, and I will react to it as he talks his complete BS.
Hey everyone, I want to talk about something important today, because it's time to get back to our roots around free expression on Facebook and Instagram. I started building social media to give people a voice. I gave a speech at Georgetown 5 years ago about the importance of protecting free expression, and I still believe this today. But a lot has happened over the last several years. There's been widespread debate about potential harms from online content. Governments and legacy media have pushed to censor more and more. A lot of this is clearly political, but there's also a lot of legitimately bad stuff out there. Drugs, terrorism, child exploitation. These are things that we take very seriously, and I want to make sure that we handle responsibly. So we built a lot of complex systems to moderate content. But the problem with complex systems is they make mistakes. Even if they accidentally censor just 1% of posts, that's millions of people. And we've reached a point where it's just too many mistakes and too much censorship. The recent elections also feel like a cultural tipping point towards...
I'll just stop it there. So he talks about it's too much censorship. Apparently, it's become obvious now for Facebook that it's too much censorship. It's taken all this time till Donald Trump won for them to realize that it's too much censorship and their systems are not dealing with it properly anymore. That's complete baloney because as you would all know, we all know, the censorship was very obvious and in your face. And some of the discoveries that we had, especially from the Twitter files, some of the exchanges between Meta, people involved in the Australian government, the type of censorship that they did during COVID, they were very deeply involved with the government in their censorship. This was not a systems failure. This was something that they were knowingly doing and participating in. So for him today to be like, oh, well, our systems aren't really up to the task of dealing with censorship anymore. So that's why we're going to this new approach. Let's keep listening to Zuckerberg.
Once again, prioritizing speech. So we're going to get back to our roots and focus on reducing mistakes, simplifying our policies, and restoring free expression on our platforms. More specifically, here's what we're going to do. First, we're going to get rid of fact checkers and replace them with community notes, similar to X, starting in the US. After Trump...
That's a great development. The fact that they're going to have a system of community notes. If you use X, community notes is actually a very good alternative to the traditional fact checking, because the fact checking actually became an industry almost in terms of the types of institutions, government linked institutions. In Australia we had RMIT Fact Lab linked with the ABC, the Australian Broadcasting Corporation, fact checking us on Facebook and other platforms, with in turn getting and receiving money in the background in secret until they were exposed by a court document that was related to Avi Yemeni and a lawsuit that he had against them that showed all these underhanded dealings with Meta. So the entire system was corrupt, and these fact checkers were the vanguard of the government helping to censor everyday Australians from just having normal conversations. So I think everyone would celebrate the demise of the fact checkers. And there's actually a very hilarious fact check that I have to show you. This is poetic in many ways. I think, let me just go to this post. I was going to save it for later, but this, no kidding, I'm pretty sure that this is a legitimate post from the New York Times today. Meta says fact checkers were the problem. Fact checkers rule that false. So this is the ultimate poetic justice for Zuckerberg. These fact checkers, this whole thing has come full circle, and now they're fact checking Zuckerberg himself as he throws them all under the bus and blames them for the censorship that he whatever excuses he makes, we know that he was actually very involved in the background with the government, even to the tune of $400 million during the previous election, siphoned into the Democrats' hands through his election, whatever integrity type things that Facebook were involved in. So this headline, I hope it's real. I'm pretty sure it's real. You can fact check me if it's not, but it says fact checking groups that worked with Meta said that they had no role in deciding what the company did with the content that was fact checked. Anyway, let's go back to the video. I'll just load that up again and hear what Zuck has to say.
First got elected in 2016, the legacy media wrote non-stop about how misinformation was a threat to democracy. We tried in good faith to address those concerns without becoming the arbiters of truth. But the fact-checkers have just been too politically biased and have destroyed more trust than they've created, especially in the US. So over the next couple of months, we're going to phase in a more comprehensive community notes system. Second, we're going to simplify our content policies and get rid of a bunch of restrictions on topics like immigration and gender that are just out of touch with mainstream discourse. What started as a movement to be more inclusive has increasingly been used to shut down opinions and shut out people with different ideas, and it's gone too far. So I want to make sure that people can share their beliefs and experiences on our platforms. Third, we're changing how we enforce our policies to reduce.
Yeah, so I mean, a lot of that is interesting as well, in terms of bringing in this community node style system. So, that was something that was really pioneered by X under Elon Musk. Really pushed that forward, and this meme is actually quite fantastic. It's made using AI, and this is a famous scene, of course, from Mr. Bean, where he's copying at an exam, copying the test results, and that's literally what Zuckerberg is doing. He is basically just ripping off X in terms of the spirit of the changes that he has made, so called. How good is this face swap AI getting now? It's going to be really hard in the future, I think, to tell the difference between, especially when it comes to political campaigns, what's real and what's not, because you saw there Mr. Bean's face being replaced with Mark Zuckerberg. You could hardly tell that it was edited in. Let's keep listening to Zuck.
The mistakes that account for the vast majority of censorship on our platforms. We used to have filters that scanned for any policy violation. Now, we're going to focus those filters on tackling illegal and high-severity violations. And for lower severity violations, we're going to rely on someone reporting an issue before we take action. The problem is that the filters make mistakes, and they take down a lot of content that they shouldn't. So by dialing them back, we're going to dramatically reduce the amount of censorship on our platforms. We're also going to tune our content filters to require much higher confidence before taking down content. The reality is that this is a trade-off. It means we're going to catch less bad stuff, but we'll also reduce the number of innocent people's posts and accounts that we accidentally take down. Fourth, we're bringing back civic content. For a while, the community asked to see less politics because it was making people stressed, so we stopped recommending these posts. But it feels like we're in a new era now, and we're starting to get feedback that people want to see this content again. So we're going to start phasing this back into Facebook, Instagram, and Threads while working to keep the communities friendly and positive.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely been happening. The throttling of political-based content, political-based creators, people like myself. It was very obvious when that kind of really was put into place by Facebook. And after a while, you could tell that, whatever we'd post, whatever we'd do, especially if it's politically related, especially videos, for some reason, it would not be seen by people. People haven't seen my posts sometimes for months and months and months, because it was actually very deliberately cancelled in terms of being shown to people on on Facebook. And for myself, really, I haven't even focused on platforms like Facebook and Instagram or even YouTube. I don't even care. Like, I'm pretty much solely focused on building on X. Of course, I post everywhere else because I think it's important to have the message get out as much as possible. But like Zuckerberg just admitted, political content, civic content was deliberately silenced on Facebook. So many people on Facebook, apparently that was to appease the users on Facebook, but we know that's not the case. All of this was done during the time of COVID because what the government was doing was highly questionable, illegal in most instances, and you had so many experts and so many other individuals with alternatives, with alternative views, ideas and plans and evidence that were just all silenced and shut down because it was very inconvenient. And this idiot here who's talking like he's some, grand, he's kind of had this awakening to censorship.
Fifth, we're going to move our trust in...
He was a part of all that, and he knowingly did all this. And today he's talking like he's this great savior of free speech. I mean, this guy is not an individual that you can trust, as good as this news is.
Safety and content moderation teams out of California, and our US-based content review is going to be based in Texas. As we work to promote free expression, I think that it will help us build trust to do this work in places where there is less concern about the bias of our teams. Finally, we're going to work with President Trump to push back on governments around the world that are going after American companies and pushing to censor more. The US has the strongest constitutional protections for free expression in the world. Europe has an ever-increasing number of laws institutionalizing censorship and making it difficult to build anything innovative there. Latin American countries have secret courts that can order companies to quietly take things down. China has censored our apps from even working in the country. The only way that we can push back on this global trend is with the support of the US government. And that's why it's...
So that's very interesting. This thing that he's doing now, he's teaming up with Trump. He's teaming up with Trump now to take on the rest of the world to defend and protect free speech. He's making it look like he was always this guy that wanted to protect and defend free speech. The time that he should have done that is during the Biden administration, when they were putting their nails into him, like he's saying, like they made him do the censorship. That's when he should have stood up and defended free speech, not now. He's got an ally in Trump, of course, in terms of free speech, and Zuckerberg did meet with Trump to kiss the hand at Mar-a-Lago, about 3-4 weeks ago. Maybe Trump had a talk with him. I know some of the comments you guys are saying Trump had a talk with him, and it's very obvious that this guy is either frightened, he's terrified, or he's trying to make money. It's one of the two. It's not because he believes in free speech, because if he believed in free speech, he would have done that with the massive power and the reach that Meta does have during that time when it really mattered. But he didn't do shit. And now he's all of a sudden, I'm going to work with Trump. We're going to battle free speech and, protect it around the world. We're going to, fight against Europe, hopefully fight against Australia as well, because you know what, Australia is like the nanny state when it comes to censoring people on social media. So yeah, now he's talking like the big tough guy that he is, because he's got, Trump at the front there taking all the arrows, so he's just hiding in the back, trying to make money and help Meta, because they compared to other social media companies like X, even YouTube, I think in some instances Meta is struggling with their brand. And someone did say that Restream is posting all types of comments on YouTube. I think what it's doing is it's actually taking all the comments that people put on Facebook and X and reposting them on YouTube. So if you're just watching solely on YouTube, you can read some of those comments, but I will try to disable that for the next stream if that's a problem based on your feedback.
It's been so difficult over the past 4 years when even the US government has pushed for censorship. By going after us and other American companies, it has emboldened other governments to go even further. But now we have the opportunity to restore free expression, and I am excited to take it. It'll take time to get this right, and these are complex systems. They're never going to be perfect. There's also a lot of illegal stuff that we still need to work very hard to remove. But the bottom line is that after years of having our content moderation work focus primarily on removing content, it is time to focus on reducing mistakes, simplifying our systems, and getting back to our roots about giving people voice. I'm looking forward to this next chapter. Stay good out there, and more to come soon.
He just does not come off as a genuine person. Stay good out there. Like, he just cannot connect to a human being. Even this video, I'm not 100% sure if this is some type of AI of Zuckerberg. I know he's trying to be a real guy here. He's sitting in like a room and, very simple, and he's just kind of talking to the camera on a mobile phone. So it's like, very intimate, like he's just kind of, made a reel himself, and he's talking to you like he really cares and understands about your problems. But this is not that guy. This is the guy that actually silenced all of us, deleted all the groups on Facebook, shut down so many accounts, took off so many, political accounts during that time who were fighting back against the madness of the government, who are pushing these vaccines, these crazy mandates, harming children, harming all types of people with this craziness that they were doing, just to have an alternative view and a debate. This was the guy that's trying to look like ordinary bloke. This was the guy that was, doing all of that. And today, he's singing a different tune, so I don't take him seriously whatsoever. But I do welcome, of course, the ability to, the fact that he has taken the knee, he has bent knee, and he has no choice to participate in now this kind of free speech era that we're getting through Elon. And I know people have reservations about what Elon is doing as well, and they have questions about all of that. But to see Zuckerberg take the knee like this, it's a humiliation for this type of individual. This is an end of the era of the completely government-controlled censorship that we had during the Biden administration. This guy is just a complete loser, as successful as he is, and with all the things that he's achieved in life, he's turned into someone like Bill Gates. And Bill Gates only ended up doing that later on in his life when he started meddling in all types of other things. Before that, he was just like this, business guy that never really did anything himself, but he was really smart at making deals and taking other people's technology and selling things. Zuckerberg actually, even though he's accused of similar things, he did have a vision and he does try things, but he's actually someone that just bended over to the Biden administration. He bended over to multiple governments all around the world, and today he's trying to be cool. And this guy will never be an Elon Musk. He'll never be cool, and this is what he has been reduced to. So, yeah, screw Zuckerberg. But let's see how everyone else has reacted to Zuckerberg and what he's been saying. I thought this was interesting. I bookmarked this last night when this news first broke from DC Trainer. Let's be real. Zuckerberg was about to be investigated for giving $400 million plus to Democrat election operations in 2020. So he went to Trump and said, "What changes do you want at Facebook?" And you might not think this is a conversation that could have happened with Trump, but Trump was actually asked about Zuckerberg, and this is what he had to say. Let's have a listen in.
I think they've come a long way. Meta, Facebook. I think they've come a long way. I watched it. The man was very impressive. I watched it. Actually, I watched it on Fox. I'm not allowed to say that. Say it?
Do you think he's directly responding to the threats that you have made to him in the past?
Probably. Yeah, probably.
So it's very low audio, the recording, but the reporter's asking him about the changes that Meta has made, and Trump is saying, "Yeah, I watched the guy on Fox News, and the guy on Fox News wasn't Zuckerberg. He was one of his leadership team who were talking about these new changes that they're making and why they're copying X and how they love free speech now." And Trump is saying, "Yeah, it's a good thing." And then the reporter asked him, "Do you think it's because of the threats you made towards Zuckerberg?" And he's like, "Yeah, probably." So it's hilarious. Trump is great. This is actually another press conference I'm going to be going through because there's so many great moments from this press conference today, and it shows you that a lot of these reporters probably this is a new era that we're stepping into now. Trump is unleashed. He does not care. He does not give a crap. He'll just say what he wants to say. And so for him to just say, this reporter asked, "Did you threaten Zuckerberg? Is that why he's changing his tune?" Trump is like, "Yeah, probably. Yeah, that's why." So interesting on that front as well. Let's see if I found any other reactions to Zuckerberg, and then I'll get to some of your comments and see what you guys are making of it all. Time magazine. Now, this is the establishment media. They're not happy about it. Why Meta's fact-checking change could lead to more misinformation on Facebook and Instagram. So the whole instance of, what the argument against what Zuckerberg is doing is that now that he's going to have community nodes, it's actually going to create more misinformation and disinformation. And I don't really see that on X. I see lots of, that type of content on X, yes, but the community node system actually gives people the ability to make their own judgment, and especially on political issues where it's a gray area, because sometimes the censorship and the misinformation is just something that's inconvenient to another political party. That is not, our classic definition of something that's misinformation. That's just something that might expose someone's bad policy. Now, if these fact checkers were using their, left-leaning ideological worldview that a lot of them did actually have, you can tell from their posts if you research these people, well, then they were, of course, censoring people on the other side of the political spectrum for their own, ideological worldview of what they think is good or bad. And that's not how, fact-checking and all these kind of things should really work, is that it should be down to individuals to see information. And if there's a guidance on that information in terms of a community note where people are saying, "Hey, look at this other information, it has this alternative point," I think that is a much better system, especially for people living in the West who are, highly educated, intelligent individuals. Some might question that as well. But, overall, we're very well educated. We all have, the ability to read and access information. It's at our fingertips. We can go then and do our own research and figure things out. Now, there is an argument to be made for scientific things, medical things. Perhaps we need to be a little bit more careful. But even then, if it's two eminent professors or doctors arguing about a scientific point, then we should be able to look at both those points and not just be shown one that, the government of the day says, "Hey, this is the approved message." The other guy who's also done the same type of research and come to a different conclusion, well, he's misinformation. Like, that's not the kind of system that works. And X, I think, goes a long way to solving it. Not 100%, but far enough for it to be a community-driven effort. And Zuckerberg, if he can achieve that on Facebook and Instagram, good for him. Obviously, it's welcomed because it just means that we can discuss politics more on platforms like Instagram and on Facebook. So maybe you'll see me posting more on Facebook going soon. I must also caveat all of this by saying that I think these changes are proposed only for the US at the moment. But I do believe in terms of how Meta works, it usually ends up trickling down to other countries as well, unless, of course, Australia shows some resistance. And based on some comments that Albanese's made today that I've seen online, it looks like there will be a little bit of resistance, but it's just, it's hard to say how successful Albanese will be because he's such a failure at almost everything else that he tries to do. So would he be able to even stop this from happening? So let's have a look at the comments and let's see what you guys are saying. And I'll see if I can reply to some of your comments. I'll also try to keep it on topic. Someone's saying, yeah, I'm not familiar with this, by the way. Sucky's wanting the contract for the SI data centers. That's true. Like, there is a lot of, government-style contracts that will be available that these companies are involved in. Facebook is a part of Meta. Meta, the company, is involved in lots of different endeavors, similar to Google, whose a parent company is Alphabet. They're involved in different things that we never, as a consumer, would have any idea that these companies are involved in. And a lot of this technology, a lot of these military contracts, especially around AI-driven technologies that these companies that want to be involved in government contracts are bidding on these all the time. So maybe Zuckerberg wants a piece of that as well, because at the end of the day, the US is very capitalist-driven. These companies are all about making money. It's a new dynamic that they have to deal with, which is Trump, and maybe even beyond that, 8 more years of Republicans from the election. So he really has to change his tune to help his company. He's definitely not doing it to help us. Yeah, Janet says here he is groveling. Yeah, I mean, look, Zuckerberg bending the knee is the end of wokeism. There was some comments he was talking about, they went too far on some of the gender issues and the way that they dealt with those discussions. So that goes to kind of the woke angle of this type of thing, right? There was, all these crazy things. You couldn't misgender people and you couldn't do this and that because you're having a serious discussion about, the erasure of women's rights. And these activists were using these platforms just to, pile onto someone and get them removed and get them, a boycott, censored, whatever. So Facebook was notorious for this type of behavior. X was, Twitter, formerly Twitter, was before Elon Musk. So this could usher in the end of wokeism, like I said before. I think it's a part of that whole process. But it remains to be seen, really, how much success that the Trump administration has in forcing countries like Europe and Australia to be on the same page when it comes to this, because it might be another case of us watching our American friends have the benefits of free speech and us, slowly dwindling. Our rights are dwindling away, with all these kind of crazy things that they're putting through under 16 social media ban, and they try to censor us with the misinformation bill. So, we're up against that in Australia. So it just really depends on the government. If it's a liberal government, will they be more similar to the US government when it comes to these issues? I don't know, but I'm hopeful that Trump throws his weight around on this particular issue, and the whole conversation around the world changes, where we can discuss anything we like, we're responsible individuals, we can community note each other, and just the fact that we can have an open debate is good enough. Zuck looks like Kathy Griffin. Yeah, that's a good one. Rukshan, what's going on with your hair? You look a bit like Zuckerberg. Sorry, but something's going on. Oh, look, just I need to have a haircut. So I haven't had my New Year's haircut. I did have a clean shave last week, but I haven't had my my haircut. And I have a barber that I always go to. So start of the year, everyone's kind of still slowly getting back into work and doing all those things. So I will go there, see them soon and have a haircut. But I don't mind the Zuckerberg look. If only it came with the Zuckerberg money, then it would be really great. But otherwise, I just got the hair that's just all over the place. So, yep. Now, the next story, guys, that I wanted to cover is, I'll get some of your comments later as well. There's a few other random comments in there. Was around, Donald Trump and, of course, the comments that he's made today, which touched the nerves of some Australians as well, saying that, how can we tolerate a leader like this? We should be rebuking him as a world leader. Where is our government's rebuking Donald Trump and his this madness of him taking Greenland, taking the Panama Canal back into U.S. administration, taking perhaps Canada, even though I think he's talking about Canada in jest. I believe he's serious about Greenland and the Panama Canal, and there's different reasons for that historically, and the involvement of the U.S. Militarily as well, and the significance of those type of land masses or assets, however you want to look at it. In terms of Canada, I think it's a totally different equation. I think he's just putting ultimate pressure and humiliation on Canada and its leadership at the moment, maybe pushing for a political change there, really throwing his weight around. Now, whether it would benefit the people of Canada to actually be a part of the US, I've seen online people have different views about this. There's some Canadians that would love to be a part of the US and be the 51st state, but there's been many other Canadians who have expressed wanting to be, of course, sovereign, their own country, their own nation, and for the US to stay away from them. Imagine if Donald Trump said, actually, I'll put this question to you guys now. If Donald Trump said that he would, annex Australia and New Zealand and make it the 52nd and 53rd state of the United States of America, would you be happy with that as an Australian? Regardless of the comedy factor and regardless of all of those things, just as an Australian that loves their country, would you be happy with an American wanting to, swallow up your state and potentially, knowing the way the American system works, it's not, there's so many great things about America, of course, the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, things that we don't have in Australia. But on the other flip side of it, we do have, with our population dynamics, better systems of healthcare. Some might argue on this. Of course, we're very resource rich for a small nation. So would we want to be handing that over to America? And that's probably the same debate that you're seeing amongst people in Canada, even though I think it's largely just a bluff by Trump and a bit of a joke. On the world stage, there's no one else that could pull it off. No other world leader could go up there as a joke even and make it sound serious that he wants to absorb Canada. But yeah, that's kind of my views on it. Let's have a look at what you guys are saying. We'd lose healthcare, yeah, at the moment. Darren says, yes, at the moment. He would like us to become a state of the United States of America. Daniel says, yeah, I'd rather be independent. Yeah, look, I mean, there's historical precedents for a lot of these things that Trump is discussing. That's right, Alaska was bought from the Russians. The Louisiana Purchase originally, almost half, I'm not sure the exact size, but a large portion of the United States of America, which was, I believe, purchased from the French or the Spanish. Sorry, my history is bad right now. I believe it's the French. But, so historically, America has kind of gone through these transactions to create itself. And Greenland, in terms of, whether that would be I believe there's already U.S. bases there. I believe the U.S. military already patrols around Greenland. And the relationship with Denmark, according to Trump anyway, is really non-existent. That's what he says. But what do the people of Denmark want? I mean, it is not really a country or a land that's being has this really strong identity as far as I know. I'm sorry if I'm offending anyone watching from Greenland, but Trump has a point when it comes to the strategic and national security side of things and the benefits perhaps these places like Greenland could get from joining up as a state or a part of the United States of America. The Panama Canal, for a long time, of course, Americans were heavily involved in the creation of the Panama Canal, administering it and all types of things related to it. And it was only, I think, 20, 30 years ago that they've actually handed it back, to put it in these terms. And the way that it's being used at the moment, perhaps has broken some of those agreements and treaties or whatever that they have. So Trump can make a case there as well. But I do understand the arguments that some people make that this is what perhaps someone like a Putin or a Xi in China, when they're talking about taking back or annexing land, maybe this is what they sound like to their people for historic reasons. And I think there is a bit of truth to that. I'm not saying it's comparative exactly, because there's other histories involved there as well. And you have a lot of countries which have, very unique ethnic identities involved in this. But I can understand why those kind of comparisons do get made. And Trump obviously will be copying a lot of this type of criticism going forward. But in these two instances, Greenland and Panama Canal, it's a very gray area either way. You could argue either way. And, Trump could be very successful in convincing for this to be the case. He has been asked whether he would use military force or, economic force to get the job done when it comes to Greenland and when it comes to the Panama Canal. And he has said yes. So I'm going to play that video. If you haven't seen that video of Trump talking about this today, let me load it up and we'll have a look at what he has to say.
The world that Greenland and the Panama Canal, so forth. Can you assure the world that as you try to get control of these areas, you are not going to use military or economic coercion?
No.
And can you tell us a little bit about what your plan is? Are you going to negotiate a new treaty? Are you going to ask the Canadians to hold a vote? What is the strategy?
Yeah, I can't assure you. You're talking about Panama and Greenland. No, I can't assure you on either of those two. But I can say this. We need them for economic security. The Panama Canal was built for our military. I'm not going to commit to that now. It might be that
Greenland and Panama Canal, so forth. Can you
So yeah, he was very frank about it. Obviously, some people react to Trump in a very Trump derangement syndrome way, and there's been a lot of takes online, which has been quite hilarious in regards to how Trump wants to just take over and take all this land from everywhere, and he's just going to keep doing it because, of course, Orange Man bad. But he might make the case. I think he might make a valid case, and maybe Americans will agree with him, and maybe the people in Greenland and the other people in Panama might come to their senses and be like, yeah, this is actually, in the current climate in the world that we're in, this is a safer bet. Now, to add, of course, to all of this happening at the moment, Donald Trump Jr. has also been visiting Greenland. There were some tweets or some comments of people saying that he's there to actually initiate the sale, right? Like real estate agents. He's there to initiate the purchase. It's already actually started, but apparently he's there for a podcast, and this all kind of just timed in at the same time. So, but let's have a look at Donald Trump Jr.'s trip to Greenland.
Guys, where are we heading?
We're heading to Greenland. Talk to the locals. Talk to people. See what they think about America. Just have a good time.
The whole town is showing up, I think, at the airport.
Let's go to Greenland.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
I mean, this is sort of my world as an outdoorsman, as someone who sort of travels to remote parts of the world. I love it.
So what do you need the help with?
Waitressing, social, everything, job, everything.
So you like the U.S.?
I like US.
Well, we're leaving the local museum in Nook. Just absolutely cool to see the old hunting styles, the clothes. It's really amazing. his original spot. It's where he moved. This is where it all started out here.
I'll pause it there, but you can see like just how much this video, for anyone that's got Trump derangement syndrome, to have Don Jr. fly in on a Trump on the Trump jet to Greenland at the same time, pretty much have this meet up with people in the locals wearing the MAGA hats. It's just driven the left and even some other people a bit nuts just seeing these type of images coming out. But this is a realignment of what's happening around the world. This is the new era that we're entering with Donald Trump as the president of the United States of America. These are the types of things that he is saying and talking about and securing for his country, to make his country better, to make his country greater. And if he thinks that this particular, if the people of Greenland would come across the United States of America and that territory would then be an asset of the United States of America and they would benefit from it militarily and national security wise, it would benefit the United States and the world. That's his argument. It would benefit Europe because he says Europe is useless at looking after these issues. They have many problems and America can do it so much better. So the Danish, he says, are not good at administering and looking after Denmark. The US is the right fit and they should do it. So that's his argument. And this is the type of leader perhaps the world needs right now at this moment, with all the stuff that's going on. I mean, I don't need to get into how bad things really are. The awakening, yeah. I mean, we're not used to politicians like Donald Trump in the West talking in this assertive manner and saying, this is what we're about and this is how we're going to assert our greatness onto the world. We're so accustomed to seeing others in other regions of the world behaving in this manner, but we're not accustomed to seeing this. But I don't think this is that unique when you go back and look in history. There are times of periods in the world where these realignments happen, and it happens sometimes because of wars. It happens sometimes because of economic reasons, and and it changes history. And we might be walking into that right now with this. So the story on this is very fresh. I don't think we'll know how this actually plays out until a few months into the Trump administration, or years, or a couple of years. This could be a recurring theme throughout. Some people are saying that Donald Trump is using Greenland and the Panama Canal and the jokes about Canada to take focus of his failures, right? That he's using these things, these memes that he shares about Canada, this beautiful American map showing Canada, of course, taken up by the US flag. And some Canadians love it, like I said, some hate it. But some people say that Trump is doing all of this to distract. It's like a great distraction of Donald Trump, that his whole administration for these next years is going to be full of these theatrics and distractions, so you don't see how poorly he's going to be governing, because he's going to be focused on things like this. I don't know. I think he's sincere in this instance. Not about Canada. I think Canada, he's joking with them. He's just trying to get under their skin and get a better deal for themselves when it comes to negotiations. But with Greenland and the Panama Canal, I think he's more or less very serious about what he wants to do when it comes to those places. I'll just see if I got any comments here to reply back to. This is good. Albo couldn't acquire Greensboro, let alone Greenland. Amen. That is so true. I don't think Albanese would be able to negotiate any type of deal like this, right? The art of the deal by Albanese would be a flop. The art of the deal by Albanese is finding ourselves in our current predicament where I'm pretty sure inflation's going up. All these things are becoming worse and worse since he became the Prime Minister of Australia. So no, I don't think Albanese could acquire any piece of land. The only thing he'd probably be successful at is actually giving up more Australian sovereignty and land. So there is that. What else is there in terms of comments? If they ain't talking about Trump, then he's not doing his job. I think maybe you're referring to the media. That's true. We have not seen the Trump derangement syndrome that is yet to come. I don't think it will remain, it's kind of lukewarm at the moment. It's not 100% negative, but they're going to go negative because think about it. The Democrats have to win the election in 4 years' time. they have to try to defeat, if it's J.D. Vance or whoever else is running up in 4 years' time against the Democrat nominee, they have to defeat them, because otherwise, if that person gets in, it's more likely that the Republicans will be there in for another 2 terms. So the only way that Democrats know how to do all this stuff is to fight dirty. So I don't see them just rolling over and going with whatever Trump says. I think you'll see them, things that we've never seen before. Pendulum swings back and forth from left to right. Eventually we end up in the middle. Yeah, there's always changes when it comes to the movement of these things. I hope he gets Albo to resign. That's right. So Justin Trudeau, that's another news story that I wanted to cover. And I know that all of this is international news and it's not really Australia focused, but I don't think there's been too much happening in terms of this kind of groundbreaking news that we're seeing around the world. Justin Trudeau resigning is a massive story in the sense that he is one of these COVID era tyrants. He is, like a dictator, like dictator Dan was, and to see him humbled in a way. And I know people are saying he's not fully out of there yet, and he's still prime minister. And technically, he's going to be there until his own party decides who the new leader that they're going to put up, and that could take a long period of time. But he has been humbled, and he has been humiliated in a way. And his legacy is going to be one where it ends in Donald Trump humiliating him multiple times, calling him the governor of Canada, the world humiliating him. And I think he's also one of these figures in history that deserves this, because he has not been a great person for Canada. And of course, he has not been a great representative for the West in many ways. He has let down, the rest of the team in the Anglosphere in the West in many instances. So, to see Justin Trudeau resign the way that he did, I think it's a good thing. So, just reading some of your comments, guys. Thanks for sending in all these comments. And I just love this feature of how the comments show up on the stream. And like I said multiple times, please ignore the bad comments. I'll try to get to them and remove them or block them from the next stream. Nathan says, let down his own people by flooding Canada with Indians. Yes, mass migration has caused many difficulties for Canada. I don't think it necessarily matters where they're bringing the people in from, but mass migration, when your own country is having all types of issues, is not always going to work out, especially if you got these kind of far left style leaders who their whole systems are built around like the welfare state. And, you're just going to have people who don't assimilate and cause other issues. And I think we'll get a chance as Australians to do this not too long in the distance. We don't need Albo to resign. We need Labor out. So, the way things are going in Australia, and I'll touch on more Australian news in the next show. But the way things are going, I think we're going to really see a very tight election. Might come down to these minor parties, but even they have to be. I will hope that Australians who are going through what they're going through right now consider how they found themselves in this position. And it's not all this nonsense they talk about, like, it's because of the spending and COVID and all this kind of stuff. You can't just keep blaming that for the rest. Every government, successive governments just keep saying, because we spent a lot of money with our crazy ideas during COVID, that's why we got to keep suffering. Like, this is kind of their fallback excuse. There are many things which are very evident in terms of policies that I won't go into detail that has led us down this path. So next election, Australians should really consider how they have found themselves, struggling to pay for bills, struggling to pay for mortgages, struggling to, just do the very basics of, having something, maybe just not the normal mundane life, just doing extracurricular activities that they would normally have money for. That's changed a lot as well. And it's become significantly worse since Albanese became the Prime Minister of Australia. That's just the honest truth, I believe. And I think many people would share that sentiment. But if the next election we end up with a Labor minority government with the Greens or something like this holding them to account in that minority government, we're going to end up in even more disaster, I believe. So definitely I'll be talking about these type of stories. The next story that I wanted to talk about, guys, was around everything that's been happening with mass migration. I'm probably going to end off on this story as well. And this really became something of the news because of what was happening in the UK. I touched on this with Avi last week as well on the Opposition podcast, where we talked about what was happening with these Pakistani Muslim rape gangs in the UK, and how Elon Musk was really involved in bringing some of these issues to light. Now, these are historical issues and historical matters. Of course, these are ongoing in some respects because these problems haven't really gone away and they continue to happen. But these historic cases that Elon Musk has been bringing up in the UK has really led to a fiery debate about all types of things to do with immigration as well, but also around law enforcement, around government's policy when it comes to assimilation of different groups, around religion. It's gotten very heated, of course, depending on which side of this that you're on. And Elon Musk being involved has obviously pissed off the European Union and the UK, the Labour factions there. They're really annoyed that this has all been, dragged up by Elon Musk because they were apparently doing things about it, which, not really evident. If you look at some of the very, I'm actually uncomfortable discussing the things that have been done to these children. It's quite shocking, and you can find these kind of the evidence from the hearings or the cases that have been read out in court and transcripts and all this kind of stuff, and it's quite sick. It's really depraved, the manner in which these children were treated. And then, the crime itself is horrific. It's inhumane. Crimes against humanity, really. And then you have the extra layer of added crime, which is the way that the government handled these things, the way that the police dealt with these things, the way that the media dealt with these things. I mean, that in itself is a crime. And I think that's what Elon Musk is highlighting. And he's been very effective at actually bringing that conversation back to light. And I know at the moment in the UK, the debate is, there's debates over Tommy Robinson, there's debates over Nigel Farage, the Reform Party, and all these kind of things. And, we have the Labour Party that are resistant to having a public inquiry happen on this matter. And there's a lot of back and forth. And it doesn't really impact Australia in the way that, it's kind of groundbreaking news story, but we haven't really seen mass coverage of it in the Australian media. The only politicians that I've really seen talking about this is Senator Babbitt from the UAP, and I've seen Craig Kelly from the Libertarian Party also speaking about this issue. There might be other politicians. I'm sorry if I missed any, but it's not really a topic of discussion here. But I feel like these kind of issues that are happening in countries where it happens because of systemic failures, and of course failures around immigration and different incompatibilities with different types of cultural or ideological practices. It's important to, of course, highlight them and discuss them in countries like Australia as well, because we could be facing similar things in the future. And I made a note of saying that if you look at Victoria right now, when you look at the crime gangs, the wave of crime that we're seeing, predominantly when I see these crimes happening, you see these African youths, and we don't really discuss it in those terms. Like, it's apparently offensive to do it. And what happens is the real issues that cause that get pushed under the covers, right? So by the time it becomes really evident that we have a massive issue on hand, it's too late, because the whole system is designed to cover that up. And we see that in media reporting. We see how they don't like to actually talk about the description of the individuals who have robbed a house or, stabbed someone. But if you look into it deeper, it's like there's certain groups of people who are committing these crimes, and that they're things that as a society we should address, because it's not good that, if you have people in your country who are not integrating and who are predominantly the people who are committing crimes. It's a massive issue. So whatever's happening in the UK, I think obviously in terms of justice for these children and their families and for the communities, it's very important. But overall, the discussion that is created around immigration, I think, is an important one as well. And people have different views on this. I've received backlash for my views on immigration in terms of the way that I explain what I think is happening. And I think a lot of people, even Australians, might take offense to some of the things that I'm saying, but I'm just kind of, what is it? Like kind of sounding the alarm on my views on how maybe migrants might be looking at a country like Australia. So a lot of the comments, around New Year's became around things like, well, this country, Australia, when you go out on New Year's Day and you look around, everyone doesn't look, Australian. They don't look white Australian. And that's true. Like you go around in some of our capital cities, Sydney and Melbourne especially, it's very different. It's very different to how I grew up in Australia in the 90s, definitely. Some parts are unrecognizable in terms of the suburbs. It's completely different. And this is different groups, not just, a lot of people in this particular instance are highlighting people who are Indians or whatever because of the discussions that Elon Musk had around work visas. But, there's different, Chinese enclaves, and there's different, like Elizabeth Street, for instance, in the city here in Victoria. If you go down Elizabeth Street or down there's Spencer Street as well, all the shops, I'm not complaining about this, but I'm just saying all the shops are, Chinese or Asian or Vietnamese, different parts of Asia, Indian, right? All the shops, all the businesses, all the owners, all the cafes, the restaurants. There is a massive change, and it's kind of like Lygon Street in Victoria. If you don't know, it's very kind of European, Italian. It's got that, but a lot more parts of the city are becoming, Asian in a way, and it's business. We're capitalists. People can open a business. Anyone can run a business, have a restaurant. Maybe we just overwhelmingly love Asian food, but the demographics are different. The uni students, everyone there is, looks Indian, looks Asian, looks, Chinese, whatever. And it's obvious. It's in your face. So you shouldn't deny that's happening. It is happening. What I was just saying is I don't think this is happening per se from the migrant side. They're not coming to replace people. If we talk about something like the great replacement theory, they're not coming purposely. These people are not coming to replace people, but the policies which are being enacted and the way that the country's moving creates an environment where culturally Australians and Australian culture, Western culture, white Australian culture, Anglo traditions can be replaced because those things are not being protected in the same manner or being celebrated. And Australia Day is a great example. You're coming into a country just imagine as a migrant, you're coming to Australia. The first thing you kind of hear about, let's say you came to Australia, during the voice referendum, like that's the year that your family landed in Australia. The things you're hearing in the media is that, Australia is doesn't belong to anyone. It's a settler colony. It's on stolen land. We can't have an anthem that celebrates Australia. Australia Day can't be celebrated. The flag is racist. We don't want to have any of these Australian flags. These are the things that migrants are hearing. So, of course, it's going to change their interpretation of what Australia is as well. And there are people saying things like, oh, well, these migrants should just come and become a part of Australia and the identity, and they should throw everything away. But the problem is they're coming into a country that is rapidly actually losing its identity. Australia is losing its identity. And when I talk about how the migrant populations can potentially dominate Australian culture, the fact that I say that is not because I think it's better that that's happening. I'm saying that as like a warning. It's happening because the Australian culture is being dominated and removed by these, lefties, these globalist organizations that hate, countries having this strict identity and a history. All these things are being removed, and in that void, other people are feeling it. And I don't think it's being done on purpose, but it is happening. And it's definitely a discussion that we need to keep having in Australia, because I don't want to see Australia become, India or Sri Lanka. Even the migrants coming here shouldn't want these countries to become like that. But without them even knowing, it can become like that. And I just don't particularly blame the people who are coming. I just blame the people in power here. I blame the leaders. I blame, in some instances, I've openly blamed, Western or white Australians in terms of not actually fighting for these things and fighting for their country in a manner that preserves history and the traditions of the West. You go overseas, the people, one of the most important things in most parts of Asia is protecting the history and keeping the history, taught in schools, people being patriotic. These are very important things in many other countries, except in most of the West. The only part of the West where this is kind of important is in Eastern European countries. I've noticed a lot. And places like Italy and stuff, and the Greeks, they're very proud of their culture and their history for many different reasons. But a lot of other places, it's being diluted and moved away. So that is some of my views on this. I'll get to some of your comments. Let's have a look at what people have said. I'm going to go back up. Yeah, so enclaves, no-go zones offer asylum to none. Yeah, I mean, that's one of the crappiest things about, I believe, about modern day Australia is the fact that people aren't assimilating into Western culture. And the only things that I personally think that we should be getting from other parts of the world is perhaps food and music or entertainment, these kind of things. Like, that's the limit of integration with other foreign cultures. And not all cultures are the same. They're not equal. There's good and bad points to all cultures, but they're not the same. They're not the same thing. And some things are completely incompatible. Some worldviews are completely incompatible to the success of the West. Like, that's why people come from different parts of the world to the West, because those countries they're coming from are complete basket cases, and they've completely failed because of their cultural practices, the corruption, those type of things. So why are we importing that type of thing into Australia? And that's happening again, like I said, without people even realizing it's happening. Because people, when they come to Australia, they don't coalesce around this Australian identity. They go to these enclaves, they go to their temples, their religious organizations, their these kind of NGOs and left-wing activists that want to capture them. And they're learning that to be in Australia, you don't really have to be Australian. You can be something else. You can keep everything that you've left behind in Australia, which sounds like this great part of freedom, and something we should celebrate. You can keep all those things and still be an Australian. I don't think you can. I think there's some things you have to let go of, and some things you have to adopt. And if we're going to keep bringing people into this country, it's because it's going to have to be the right balance of individuals or peoples or skilled migration of people that are able to do that. But for that to happen, like I said, we need to have better policies around that. All right. Doesn't matter why they're coming, there are weapons being used to replace us. Look, yeah, again, I don't think it's been done on purpose by the people that are coming. They have no idea. They're coming for a better life. A lot of people just and people might disagree with that and say, well, Australia is not an economic zone. That's what I see a lot of people saying, Australia's not an economic zone. But these people have no idea. Like, they're coming from the lowest of lows in their lives, and they're just coming for a better opportunity. And they're getting away from things where governments, perhaps who had an opportunity to become like a great nation, have dwindled their ability to do that over a long period of time, and now people have to run away. And the worst thing that could happen to a country like Australia is for it to become somewhere that people here have to run away and leave to go somewhere else, because the way that the country is going is turning into more of a third world or developing nation. And there are aspects of Australia where it's kind of becoming like that, unfortunately. Yeah, Daniel says, I live way out in the bush and all new businesses are mostly Indian run or bought by Indian immigrants. Yeah, I got into trouble for saying that this as well. Like, these some of these migrants are, again, this is not like a comparison between white Australia and migrant Australians, but they seem to be more ambitious, more industrious in terms of wanting to do things. And they seem to be, gathering together and doing these things and getting it done. Whereas, the things that we're worrying about in Australia, in the West, and I'm including myself in this Western group of people, even though I don't look like a white Australian, I grew up here, so I'm a part of this kind of way of thinking. The things that we're worried about are, things like whether a man can become a woman, right? Whether, there's like 10 or 15 or 20 different genders. Whether, this thing's offensive or that word's offensive, or, welcome to country ceremonies, or, are we racist because of our history? These are the things that are kind of in the minds of the people who are accustomed to the more of the Western way of thinking. And these are the things that we're fighting over. And while that's happening, other people who have none of those attachments are taking the opportunities that are available in a country like Australia very seriously and getting it done. And of course, there are ways that the system is manipulated for their benefit. Of course, that this happens in a system where there's no, this kind of overarching, strict, moral requirement to behave in a certain way. Because you have universities, for instance, they care about money. So what makes them money right now is bringing in international students. So if you're seeing them signing up these deals with other countries overseas and bringing in hundreds of thousands of students, there's a very real argument to be made there that even though they're saying that it's for like, it's going to improve Australia and stuff when they talk about the policy, they're really just doing it for money. And they're not doing the other things, which include assimilating those students into Australian culture that maybe might make it a bit more of a better transfer when that happens. They're not doing those things. They're just happy with getting that money, and they just want more and more and more. And, things just keep getting worse and worse and worse. Rukshan is assimilated to Aussie. He probably assimilated. Yeah. So like I had no choice in my my journey to becoming Australian. Like my parents came here through skilled migration, and skilled migration is really something that's done at the invitation of a government where they're looking for migrants from overseas to help the country prosper or build something or do something or address some need, help the economy, boost something. That's why governments usually look to these type of programs, traditionally anyway. So I come from a family that came through skilled migration, and as a small kid, I have no choice in any of this, and I went to primary school here, prep onwards, and I have no other idea of anything else than being Australian, and that was in the 90s, and you grow up, you're Australian, you're singing the national anthem, you're supporting, I'm going for the Hawks, the football club, I'm watching Melbourne Cup. I have no idea. I'm Australian. So, but I have taken that as a challenge for me today when I'm, taken these opportunities and benefits to actually become the person I am today, and to then use that not to denigrate this country and hate on this country, but to actually push it forward and contribute, because that I think is the correct model. And of course, I'm not saying I'm the perfect model assimilated immigrant or whatever, like all these kind of things. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying I think there's an obligation upon people that come here to actually partake in the, the great, the building of Australia into something even better and better as time goes by, because we should always be looking to improve. So that is where I look at it from. Rukshan, you're Aussie as Marmite. And yeah, look, the final point on all of this is the most important point, and this is why I talk about this issue with immigration, and the reason that I talk about that, migrant populations are dominating, and they'll continue to dominate, and they'll continue to grow, and they, kind of have this all this figured out. And the reason for that is because what happens is when these debates start happening, the left side of politics, they're very smart. They understand division more than anything else. That's their bread and butter. They understand how to use racism to their advantage. They understand all of those things. They understand how to build their voter base. And what will happen is, as time goes on, as more people have come to Australia that have no kind of shared values with Australia, they're not like me in the sense of, being proud of the national anthem and our history, and the Western traditions and the Western history of jurisprudence, and everything that we kind of took as a civilization from, let's say, from the Roman Empire to where we are today in the West. They're not proud of these things because they have their own cultural identity and way of thinking and religious worldview that they've bought in, that has not been changed in a way where they've been told, hey, the reason that you're here in Australia is because of these better values and traditions that you should actually adopt. We're not doing that. And what these political groups do, what these kind of policymakers do, is they will get these massive voting blocks in the future that have nothing to do with Australia. And what those groups can do in the future when it comes to elections is really change the dynamics of the country even more. And what I'm afraid of is that Australia, that I know growing up as a kid, that I don't really know today because I feel like we have lost our identity, will be even worse come 10, 20 years from now, where it'll be hard to recognize what, that Australia is. And people can, of course, make the arguments that Australia was different in the 60s, in the 50s, and the 40s. So think about that accelerated, right? Accelerated and used as a weapon by politicians in a way, in terms of getting their votes to win elections. They will tell these people, this side of the other people, they hate you, they don't like you. They say you're not Australian. We think you are. You just have to vote for us, and we'll enact policies that benefit you, and we'll have diversity, and we'll have DEI, and we'll have this. We won't have Australia Day anymore. We'll celebrate Chinese New Year. We'll celebrate Diwali. We'll have all these things, and this is what the new Australia is. Forget the old. This Australia is built on racism. They're colonialists. They're settlers. The Aboriginal people were. They're the original people here, and they've been discriminated against, and these same people are now discriminated against. You vote with us and we'll change everything. And more often than not, these populations that don't really integrate into societies, when they come down, and you see this in the UK right now, they will vote a certain way, and those votes actually have consequences. So the reason I talk about this issue is because I'm worried about where this is going, because people that are coming to this country are not going to be voting for conservative style policies. They're not going to be voting for policies that stop immigration, because they have no education around what's bad about that. They don't know. They're being completely overlooked as a threat when it comes to those terms. And I see it as a threat that needs to be addressed in a smart manner, not in a racist manner, where we're just like, who are these people? Let's just deport them, re-immigration, and all these kind of things that people are talking about. They're things just never going to happen, regardless of the history and the grievances that you have. It's not going to happen. People that are talking about re-immigration are like, people within the Aboriginal Australian activist movement that talk about kicking out the settlers. It's the same kind of thing. It's not going to happen. If you're a white Australian, you don't believe that's going to happen. And these talks that you have some of these extremists on the right talking about, we're just going to send everyone back. Doesn't matter how many generations they've been here. If they're not white Australian stock, they're going to be gone, because, we need to turn Australia back white. These people are ludicrous. If you listen to these people as your guidance on this issue, you're going to get outplayed, outsmarted by the left every single time. It really needs to be a smart conversation when it comes to this. And it really needs to be about establishing Australian identity, Australian culture, and dominating these other worldviews that are foreign to Australia. One of the things we pride ourselves with is religious freedom. Well, that's a great thing, of course. But if those religious freedoms means that other foreign religions to the Christian tradition, which is what the West is mainly built on, from the Roman Catholic to the Christian, and different types of Christianity now around other parts of the West, that's what it's built on. If they're foreign to our ideas of justice, or the way that we look at things like the treatment of women and those things, we shouldn't be allowing them to have the same type of power in terms of equality when it comes to influence within Australian, the legal system, or the way that we deal with issues. That doesn't matter. Like, those things shouldn't matter. If you want to live in a country like that, go live in a country like that has that type of system based on that type of religious view or worldview. Like, we don't need that here. We have a successful country that's built on something that's actually fundamentally worked very well, so well, in fact, that you've decided to come here to a Christian country to take, the opportunities that comes with that. So why would you want to dilute that with something that's failed in many ways? So there's ways to have this argument in a respectful manner, and there's definitely challenges to this, but I think it's very important, because I'm seeing the discourse online, and it is getting to a point where there's ridiculous things being said, and people who are, I would more so considered as being normally moderate people are saying completely ridiculous things, which are going to be just used against them, aren't actually going to get them anywhere. And they're going to completely miss the boat when there's a massive shift that happens, because we just all we need to do is look to the UK and see where they are today, and that's where Australia is headed, unless we kind of have very serious changes to our identity and our culture and the way that we respect this country, and of course, assimilation into Australian culture. So that's where I come from on this particular topic. Yeah, I mean, there is an element of I think it's not just about white people. It's even third, fourth, fifth generation Australians who come from migrant populations who have started now to hate themselves and hate what their parents did or their great grandparents did when they came to a country like Australia. They've begun to hate those things, and they don't understand like where those people come from and what it took to actually build a place like this in about 200 something odd years, right? Australia is fairly new in terms of its modern history, its westernized history. It's quite new. Its success as a nation is quite dramatic for a country that's, as what we know as Australia today, 200 something years old. Compare that to cultures and countries which have thousands of years of history who still haven't got their crap together. So we're relatively lucky in Australia, but we're kind of going down that same path where we end up hating ourselves. We create these issues that shouldn't exist, and we really have an opportunity to change that before it becomes too late. Yeah, it's about culture, not color. I think, yeah, people can adopt cultural practices. Like many of us, when we travel overseas, like, I've been to different parts of the world. I've been to different parts of the Middle East, different parts of Asia, which are a bit more strict. I am respectful of those cultures. My wife will wear, in certain countries, will wear longer skirts because, it's not socially acceptable in those countries to show a certain amount of skin, for instance. Now, whatever we might think of that in the West, that's their country, that's their religion, that's how they want to do things. And we kind of accommodate that by being respectful individuals when we're traveling. Now, the same should apply here when coming to Australia. If we're a country that's about women's rights and people kind of, wearing bikinis and running around and stuff, then all of a sudden we don't need to be having discussions in this country about, dressing modestly because there's new populations, for instance. I'm just kind of making up a scenario here, but this new population, like, that's too much. That's kind of, it's a problem for our religious sensitivities, things like this. That's kind of, you're trying to change the culture and you're trying to bring something else which is foreign. Like I said, over over thousands of years, yes, you get different influences from different parts of the world, but the way that it's happening, it's so rapid. And I think that's why there's a bit of a culture shock for many, especially white Australians, when they go out into the city and see it is everyone just kind of, looks like me, or looks Asian or looks Chinese. And it is a bit of a shock. It's a shock for me because, like it's just what it is. Like, it's like everyone just kind of looks like me. Like, where am I? It's kind of like that. It's that feeling, and I can understand. For white Australians, maybe it's even more pronounced. So that's why I talk about these issues. So yeah, Nathan here, who I think Nathan also follows me on X, and he writes all such things to me. He says, Rukshan, your parents contributed to it as well. Again, I don't think you can blame the individual migrant communities that come here because they don't understand that kind of concept when they're coming. Maybe today they do. Maybe some of them do today. When my parents came here, like, there was no real communications with their country. Like, if they had to call their parents overseas, they'd have to call someone else, and they'd have to kind of send a message to them, and then they'd have to go to their house. And, this is why the landline. So, English was something that they had to, they had, obviously basic ideas and understandings of English, but to, learn Australian culture, they'd have to take extra classes, really kind of integrate with the community. The kids, us, we were a big part of, going through the schooling system here. And then that also creates our, own links with the country. But the parents themselves, a lot of the time back then in the 80s and the 90s, would have no real idea. Today, it's different. I agree in some respects. Today, the people that are coming, who are mostly international students, sometimes that you're seeing these massive population booms in terms of the country looking different. Well, it's different where everyone's on social media. They already know what to expect, kind of, in Australia. You can find YouTube videos of what it's like to be a student in Australia. So it's a different world. They've really westernized in overseas in terms of the cultural things that they consume, thanks to the internet. And they are actually even more advanced than the immigrants that came here in the 80s and the 90s. They know even more than what my parents knew when they came to Australia back then, because they were kind of dropped into Australia when they came down here, and they had to all these services and all these kind of things didn't exist in the same manner that it does today. So yeah, the migrants that are coming today are even more prepared, are even more ambitious in the sense that they know how the systems work. They have connections here. They have the network set up that they can benefit from. So yeah, you're dealing with the people who are even more equipped to actually take a hold of the opportunities. And that's perhaps why you're seeing the acceleration of those opportunities being taken up by people from overseas. It is kind of a really complex topic, and it is what it is. And like I said, I discussed a lot of the issues with that and my reservations against that as well. Yeah, that's true. Like all the migrant populations that I know about the welfare system really well, and they know about Centrelink. They know how to take advantage of those things. They know all these. They know all of that. And again, if you want to do these things, you need to have some sort of guidelines and things in place. But really, we're losing an identity. We're losing culture because people are happy in this country. A lot of these political groups are happy to have mass migration because they see it as them securing a future voter base. But yeah, guys, thank you for participating today. I'm just reading through the comments. If there's anything else, that I see in the comments as I'm reading up, I will try to respond to it. So yeah, excuse my silence while I read these comments. I need to find something to play while I'm reading comments, so it just kind of keeps people entertained. Otherwise, you might drop off while I'm quickly trying to read through all these. Thanks, Daniel. You're glad to have me. Look, I have been given rough estimates that within about 10 years, the ethno-nationalists will get a stronghold, and they will be re-immigrating everyone out of the country and deporting me as well. So let's see. I don't know. Those guys struggle with a lot of different things, and they get outplayed by the far left very often. Dallas says, stop using the term white. No one is white. We are light brown to dark brown. Yeah, I mean, look, we don't need to talk about skin colors, but sometimes on these topics like immigration and migration, this is the other thing. Like, people just say it's like racist to talk about it, but sometimes you have to talk about the ethnicities, you have to talk about the religions, you have to talk about the race, and you have to talk about skin color. That's the only way that you're going to have a serious conversation about a topic like this. And it's not racism. I understand that, we're living in a world where we don't really want to touch on some of these things. And, Australia means a lot of different things to different people. But in this type of debate, I'm pretty open to discussing race quite openly. As long as it doesn't veer off into like these derogatory things, you accuse people of things that they have no control over. That's when it becomes problematic. Nobody wants to deport you, Rukshan. There's a few people, trust me. I think Nathan is up there. Yeah, you got some other people saying, speak for yourself, I'm white. This is a part of it. I honestly believe this is a part of it because it's true. every other culture in the world is celebrated. Skin colors are celebrated, and it's like all of a sudden it's like bad to be white, and it's weird because if you go overseas and you go to I'm talking about Asia primarily, subcontinental Asia, they talk about white people, but it's not like in a racist way. It's like, oh, they're white, they're white people, they're different to us, they're white, their culture is different, what they do is different, their countries are different, they're white. So we understand that there's a group of people who are white people, and traditionally within Asian culture, again, people might not agree with this anymore, but traditionally within Asian culture, white societies, Western societies, are looked up upon as in the sense of admiration. Now that could be to do with the colonial histories and the long-standing history with, for instance, for where I come from with the British, long before Australia was even an idea or a creation, we were already assimilating with Western culture through, our history with the Portuguese, the Dutch, and the British. Hundreds and hundreds of years before Australia was even an idea, we were already assimilating into elements of Western tradition and British culture. Our legal systems were being changed. The marriage systems in Sri Lanka were changed to match and mirror more of the Western tradition. These changes happened in India. Of course, it happened, and that's just history. And so, the way that we look at the world there, as opposed to how Australians discuss themselves, is really weird, and people get caught up on in the most different things. But yeah, like someone said here, Asian people generally get along with white people, and I find that to be the case. You can go travel around India or Sri Lanka, and people for the most part, you'll be like, oh, they'll treat you really well, and people have these experiences. Even for an Aussie traveling to, for instance, Bali or something, like that's our understanding of traveling in Australia. How friendly is everyone and respectful are they of you guys? Even though Australians in large act like the biggest, dickheads when they go to somewhere like Bali. Maybe the tolerance is changing, but you know what I'm trying to say. Generally, people outside of the Western hemisphere or that influence aren't as bad towards white people as they are portrayed to be in the West and by each other. That's a really weird phenomenon. And, the people who are learning that, to hate white people in the West are being taught by white people themselves that, these people are, slave owners or they're the colonizers, hate us. And it's complete nonsense. And, we need to move away from that as well, of course. Yeah, someone's saying here, Andrew Tate had a good take on the immigration thing. Look, I mean, Andrew Tate is a lot of things. And the problem with Andrew Tate is he says a lot of different things at different times, and his actions sometimes are dubious. He's someone who's converted to Islam as well. And then now he's talking about like problems with Islam and stuff like this in the UK. And he's talking from like a Christian nationalist perspective. I don't want to get into Andrew Tate discussions because that's like a totally different ball game. But yeah, look, guys, I hope you've enjoyed today's feed. It did go for a bit longer, and this is kind of what I want to do, just talk and discuss some of the things that I'm seeing in the comments. Something that we can potentially all get behind is deport Avi. That is, something that even as everything I've said to this point, I think we can make an exception there and send him back at least somewhere. So I'm not opposed to deporting that, even if we just have a separate law just for Avi, and we send him off. So that's fine. Even though Avi was actually born here, but we could still deport him somewhere. All right, guys. I hope you guys have a great night. If you're watching in Australia, thank you for joining in so late. If you're watching from around the world, thank you again. You can find me on X at The Real Rukshan. Also, I'm on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram at The Real Rukshan. Also on my website, www.realrukshan.com. I will be again online tomorrow at 7 p.m. for the Opposition Podcast with Avi Yemeni. Thanks, guys.